In an American town where nothing hinted at a sensation, workers began demolishing an old mansion. The house had been on sale for a long time, then it was bought for reconstruction, and during the dismantling of the basement, one of the builders stumbled upon a strange protrusion in the wall. He thought it was just an embedded concrete slab. But while pounding it with a sledgehammer, he suddenly uncovered a small cavity from which the smell of old engine oil wafted out. When the hole was widened, a piece of red metal emerged from under the concrete. At first, they thought it was an old furnace. But then, someone recognized the outline of a Ferrari's front fender. It turned out that behind the wall was a completely entombed sports car, a Ferrari Dino, almost untouched by time. It stood in absolute darkness, like in a sarcophagus, with a partially filled fuel tank and keys in the ignition. An investigation was conducted. It turned out the car had been reported stolen since the early 70s. At that time, the owner was a young doctor who bought the Dino, with his last money. He drove it for only a few months before the car was stolen. No one knew that the thieves decided to hide the Ferrari right in the basement of their own house. The owner of the house was rumored to be involved in shady dealings and hid the car to wait it out, but for some reason, never retrieved it. Experts took the car. Despite nearly 50 years in a concrete trap, the Ferrari was preserved almost perfectly. The restoration took less than a year. Today, this Dino is part of a private collection in California, but the strangest part isn't even how the car got there, but that a note was found in the glove compartment, clearly left by someone later, after the theft, with a signature that no one could decipher. It seemed like the height of mystery, but what was discovered in the French countryside left even the experts truly shocked. In France, in a small town near La Rochelle, an elderly woman passed away, who didn't have much care from anyone. She lived a secluded life and rarely interacted with her neighbors. After her death, her grandson, who came to settle the inheritance matters, received the keys to an old shed that, according to the neighbors, hadn't been entered for decades. When the man opened the doors, so much trash spilled out that they had to call a tractor. Broken furniture, boxes, broken toys, old cans. Everything was layered with dust almost up to the ceiling. But on the third day of cleaning, the grandson noticed something strange under the tarp, a round metallic shape that clearly didn't belong to the furniture. He pulled back the cover and was stunned. Underneath was the body of a car. At first, he thought it was an old Peugeot or Citroën. But the expert who was called and came to inspect the find immediately turned pale. In front of him stood a Bugatti Type 57 SC, Atlantic. A car that is valued at tens of millions of dollars at auctions. The VIN check confirmed its authenticity. The car was one of 4 produced in the world. One of the specimens was considered lost forever after World War II. And now, it stood under layers of trash, completely forgotten but miraculously preserved. How did it end up there, and why did the woman never mention it? Perhaps her husband was involved with the black market for cars. Or he hid the car from the Nazis. There is no answer. But now the Bugatti is restored and is in a private museum. Its value is about $40 million. And now imagine you find a car, but not in a barn, underground in the middle of a modern city. Yes, that happens too. In downtown Los Angeles, construction began on an underground parking lot for a luxury residential complex. The work was going according to plan until an excavator hit the metal roof of an underground structure. When it was opened, a massive door was revealed, camouflaged and reinforced like a bank vault. Behind it was a garage, completely cut off from the world. Inside stood a 1960s Ford Mustang fastback. The car was covered in dust but was surprisingly well preserved. On the driver's seat lay an old jacket, and in the ashtray were cigarette butts of a long-defunct brand. Metal shelves, with gasoline cans, spare parts, and weapons were installed along the sides of the garage. The police soon confirmed that this was the car reported missing along with its owner back in the late 60s. The man disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and the case was closed as hopeless. No one could explain how the car ended up underground in a place where there weren't even any buildings at the time. It seemed that the garage was intentionally built. Perhaps the owner was hiding from someone. Maybe he was planning an escape. He might have even died, somewhere nearby. One detail made the experts think. In the trunk, there was a box with bank bonds that were worth millions at the time of discovery. But even that pales in comparison to the next find made, in the attic. An old building in Florida, which previously served as a hotel. In the early 20th century, it was purchased for renovation. The contractor decided to preserve part of the historical ambience and went to the attic in search of furniture and decor. But instead of lamps and carpets, he found a platform clearly made to support weight. On it stood a Duesenberg Model J, one of the most expensive and luxurious cars of its time. Around it were cobwebs, old fabric, and boxes with spare parts, but the car itself was as if preserved. It was later revealed that the hotel owner in the 1930s ordered this car specifically for business visits. However, he soon died from an illness, and the heirs abandoned the building. The attic was closed, and the car was simply forgotten. Almost 100 years later, it stood there like a time capsule. Now this Duesenberg is the jewel of a private collection. It has not been sold, despite offers exceeding $10 million. It is believed that the car brings good luck to its owner. But, if you think that's the height of surprise, wait until you hear about an underground discovery in Europe. There, it's not just about one car, but an entire $1 million park. In the Netherlands, a group of heirs went to assess an old estate inherited from a long-deceased relative. The house looked like a typical abandoned mansion, dusty with peeling walls. But near the basement, they found a steel door hidden behind a cabinet. It led down to a depth of more than 20 feet. What they saw there was beyond imagination. A spacious underground hangar filled with luxury cars. There were Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, Jaguars, and even a Bugatti. In total, more than 30 cars, all covered with a thick layer of dust, but almost in perfect condition. Who put them there and why? It is assumed that the owner of the mansion was a major dealer and secretly collected cars to sell them later. But why didn't he tell anyone? And why did he abandon everything? One of the Rolls-Royces turned out to be a rare modification, custom-built for an Arab prince. The car was unique down to the emblems on the headrests. It is now on display at the Retro Car Museum in Stuttgart. And this is just the beginning. The next discovery was made in an ordinary Texas barn, but it caused a sensation worldwide. The heart of Texas, a typical farm. An old fence, a dilapidated barn, a rusty tractor. After the death of the owner, a solitary mechanic, the property was transferred to the state. Officials arrived to inspect the area, and one of them noticed a massive lock on the back doors of the barn. Curiosity got the better of them. When the doors were opened, their eyes nearly popped out of their heads. In front of them stood an entire collection of racing cars. Unbelievable. Under the covers were a Shelby, a Cobra, several classic Corvettes, a Jaguar E-Type, and even a rare Ford GT40. All of it was covered in a thick layer of dust and oil, but the condition of the cars was almost perfect. No documents were found in the house, and no one knew how the modest farmer had amassed such a collection. It was later discovered that he was a former mechanic for a racing team, and he spent his life buying up cars. He carefully repaired damaged cars that no one else wanted to restore, but he never showed them to anyone, according to the neighbors. They considered him an eccentric, and now his barn has become a pilgrimage site for car enthusiasts. Part of the collection was sold at auction for millions of dollars, and the rest is displayed in a local museum. But one car from that collection disappeared before the authorities arrived. Only a tire mark in the dust was left behind. Where it went and who knew about it in advance, no one knows. Meanwhile, in remote Alaska, the cold concealed another, much darker discovery. Alaska, winter, sub-zero temperatures, permafrost. Researchers in the swamp zone near an old military base were searching for the remains of sunken equipment from World War II. Suddenly, their sonar detected an anomaly, and the excavation took several days, but the result was worth it. From beneath the frozen peat, the silhouette of an army truck emerged, a WC Daughter. The vehicle looked like a preserved body in excellent condition, the engine intact, but inside there were no documents, no personal belongings, only a dusty coat, neatly folded on the seat. By the number, it was determined that the truck was part of a military convoy that disappeared in the late 40s. Back then, they talked about a snowstorm and an avalanche, but no traces were found. And there it is, a lonely ghost among the swamps. Strangely, the instruments indicated that other metallic objects were previously located near the truck, which someone managed to extract earlier. An old army tag was found in the cabin, and the name on it was not listed among the missing. And next to it, a note. He knew everything he shouldn't have left. The signature was unreadable. If this truck could be considered a lost artifact, then the next vehicle, found near an abandoned church in France, was a true message from the past. In the south of France, in a village where time seemed to stand still, near a half-ruined church, a shepherd found an old car, half overgrown with grass. Curiosity got the better of him, and he called the police. It turned out to be a Citroën DS, a symbol of French engineering. From the mid-20th century, the car stood with its hood open, missing one wheel, as if it had been abandoned in a hurry. Inside, there were no documents or personal belongings, only a yellowed letter in the glove compartment. It was handwritten in beautiful penmanship, and it said, "If you are reading this, I am already far away, forgive me." The letter was accompanied by a wedding ring with engraved initials. The locals remembered that in the 60s, one of the village residents disappeared. The day before his wedding, there were rumors that his fiancée was involved with the underground movements. At that time, it was believed that he had died in the river. But apparently, he ran away and left a message. The car was taken to a museum. The letter is now displayed separately, and still, no one knows where he went and why he left his Citroën by the church. Meanwhile, in another part of the world, the sand concealed a true gem. A car that Enzo Ferrari himself adored. In Saudi Arabia, in an abandoned elite neighborhood where princes and oil magnates once lived, local teenagers stumbled upon a ruined mansion. Half of the building had already been leveled to the ground. In one of the garages under the sand, they saw a strange shape. Clearing away the sand, they stumbled upon a Lamborghini Miura, a car often called one of the most beautiful in history. The car was almost intact. Sand had gotten into the interior, the paint had faded, but the parts and engine remained untouched. It was later discovered that this Miura belonged to a sheik who suddenly disappeared in the 90s. His story is shrouded in rumors. Some say he was a victim of palace intrigues, others, that he faked his death to start a new life. But what was most surprising was that a safe was found in the trunk of the car. Inside were documents, money, and a pendant with a photograph of a woman. The face in the photo was carefully cut out. The Lamborghini was restored. Now it participates in exhibitions all over the world. But the question of why such a rare car ended up in a forgotten garage, and what happened to its owner, remains unanswered. The next car is no less legendary. But its story begins with a dark prohibition and a strange mystery in a private house in California. California, San Fernando Valley. After the death of a local car collector, neighbors expected to see an auction and the removal of cars from his spacious garage. But one Porsche 356 remained untouched. Relatives categorically refused to sell it, saying that this was Walter's own wish. The former owner. This Porsche stood in the corner, covered with a dusty film. There were rumors that the disappearance of Walter's younger brother was connected to this very car. In 1956, they went for a drive, but only the older brother returned. He said that his brother left by hitchhiking, but the neighbors didn't believe it. After that night, he never touched the Porsche again. He didn't wash it, didn't take it out, just put it in the corner and locked it up. Dozens of ing things were found in his house. Letters, photographs, and newspaper clippings about missing people. And in the car's trunk, an old map with a wasteland outside the city circle. The investigation was reopened, but no evidence was found. Today, the Porsche 356 is in a museum with a plaque that says "Never Touch." Ironically, the car that was created to bring joy and freedom turned into a symbol of a dark mystery. And now, let's head across the ocean to the luxury of the Soviet era, where everything was done through connections, but no one expected that a trace would remain in the form of a luxurious ghost car. When restorers began to restore one of the former palaces from the USSR era in Crimea, they had no idea they would find something capable of overshadowing any museum value. In one of the utility annexes, hidden behind a drywall wall, the builders found metal gates. They managed to open them only after a week. Rust had done its job. Behind the doors, there was silence and semi-darkness. And in the middle of this empty room stood a car. A GZ21. Volga, but an unusual one. Everything about it was unusual. The interior was lined with red leather instead of the usual dashboard, wood inserts, air conditioning, a refrigerator, and even a built-in mini-safe. The plaque inside read "For personal use. Not for sale." The Volga was built to a custom order. For a foreign diplomat, most likely from the Middle East. Perhaps it was used for unofficial visits that no one was supposed to know about. How did it end up forgotten? It is assumed that after the collapse of the USSR, many premises were hastily closed, without inventory. The Volga was simply forgotten or deliberately left behind. Inside the glove compartment, they found a map with markings in Crimea, Turkey, and Iran. None of them were officially designated. The car was sent for restoration. Today, it is in a private collection, and no one knows exactly who it belongs to now. But sometimes, to find something forgotten, you don't need to go abroad or dig underground. Sometimes, secrets are literally hidden underfoot, as happened in a New York subway. New York. A subway station in Manhattan. A crew is renovating an old tunnel, breaking through a brick wall to widen a technical passage. And then a strike on the wall echoes with a ringing sound. Bricks start to crumble, revealing a passage behind which is the body of a car. In the tunnel, cut off from the rest of the world, stood a Hudson Hornet. A car that became famous in mid-20th century races. It was covered in dust, but surprisingly intact. Nearby were old toolboxes, a gasoline can, and a pack of newspapers from May 1953. How the car ended up in the subway still has no definitive answer. According to one version, the owner, a street racer who participated in underground races, through nighttime New York, was hiding from the police. Or perhaps it was a secret route for smuggling. There were no documents inside, just an inscription on the inside of the door. As long as you're moving, you're free. The Hudson Hornet was taken for restoration. Today, it is a symbol of an urban legend that neither the police nor historians could explain. But the next discovery literally changed the perspective on one of the most famous figures of the 20th century, John Kennedy. And it all started with a simple barn. A man inherited a farm from his grandfather, about whom he knew almost nothing. The house was empty, but in the old barn, he found a car. A dark blue Lincoln Continental, which clearly hadn't been driven for decades. The car had diplomatic plates and a leather interior, perfectly preserved. In the glove compartment, there was a leather briefcase with films and documents. On one of them, a photo shows Kennedy standing by that very Lincoln, surrounded by people in suits. The documents in the folder stated that the car belonged to the president's bodyguard. And next to it, a handwritten letter. It mentioned unknown routes, alternative evacuation points, and a secret mission in Dallas. The films were too damaged to be fully restored, but on one, the license plate of the very car in which Kennedy was killed could be seen. However, the number did not match the official records. This discovery caused a sensation among historians. The car is currently being studied in the archives, and almost nothing is known about the owner of the barn. Perhaps he was one of the invisible people working for the shadow side of the state. The next story will show that sometimes wealth isn't hidden. It just lies right under your feet, waiting for its time. Switzerland, a cozy cottage on a hillside. After the owner's death, his grandchildren decided to improve the property. During the excavation work, a tractor fell into a pit. Clearing the collapse, the workers discovered a hatch. Underneath it was a spiral staircase leading down to a vast basement. There, in absolute darkness, stood 20 vintage cars, perfectly lined up. Among them were an Alfa Romeo, Mille Miglia, Hispano, Suiza, a 1930s Mercedes, and several models that couldn't be identified at all. Each car was covered with a dusty film. Nearby lay sets of keys and tools. Everything indicated that they were being taken care of. And quite recently, it turned out that Grandpa was a collector and secretly bought cars through third parties. He built the basement in secret from his wife, friends, and even his children. Only to his grandchildren did he leave a key and a map. The cars have not been appraised yet. Some of them could be worth tens of millions of dollars. But one of the cars had no license plates, no keys, and no history. It just stood there, as if waiting to be taken. The final story will tell of a true treasure found in a place where people usually search only for gold and mirages. The Nevada desert. A group of enthusiasts, engaged in searching for abandoned sites, was surveying the area of an old Cold War-era base. In the distance, among the sands, they noticed a strange shape. It turned out to be a Tucker 48, one of the rarest cars in U.S. history. Only 51 were ever produced. Units. The car stood in absolute silence. The wheels were halfway sunk into the sand. The windows were smashed, but the body was almost undamaged. No license plates, no papers. Only a key in the glove compartment. Old, with engraving. And a note. If you found this, you are ready. Safe in Reno Bank, Box 9. The team contacted the bank. The box did indeed exist, but its contents were classified at the request of third parties. The Tucker was taken away on a trailer. Its owner never came forward. Many believe that this car is part of an old conspiracy related to the closure of the Tucker Company. But that's a whole different story.